Dawn slides over Boeotia like a blade drawn slow from a sheath. You can almost hear bronze creak, smell the sweat trapped under linen cuirasses, and feel the hard-packed earth vibrating with marching feet. Imagine standing in that line with a spear longer than your body, knowing the man beside you is the person you love most on earth. You probably wouldn't survive your first real clash. The Greeks of the early 4th century BCE didn't romanticize war. They feared it, trained for it, and built their cities around the fact that it was coming. Thebes, at this moment, is a city bruised by humiliation. After the Peloponnesian War, Spartan power presses down on Greece. In 380 BCE, a Spartan force seizes the Theban citadel, the Cadmean officially recognized event that every ancient source treats as a political earthquake. Exiles flee, collaborators rule, and Thebes learns what it means to be occupied by the most professional army in the Greek world. Yet occupation also teaches lessons: how Spartans drill, how their hoplites keep formation under stress, how a small corps of elites can anchor a whole city's force. In 379 BCE, Theban exiles slip back into the city, assassinate the puppet leaders, and retake the Cadmea. The uprising is quick, almost cinematic, but its consequence is slow and structural. Thebes must rebuild an army that can stand in line against Sparta. Hoplite warfare is not about lone heroes, it's about a machine of shields overlapping, spears projecting, and morale locked into rhythm. A city without cohesion breaks. A city with cohesion becomes dangerous. The sacred band will grow out of that necessity. But first comes the soil it needs: a renewed Theban identity, and a leadership class willing to experiment. Their emerging doctrine argues that courage isn't only individual, it's cultivated by social bonds and constant training. Something still debated in the literature when historians ask whether Thebes innovated culturally or merely weaponized existing pederastic ideals. Compared to Spartan reliance on state-driven discipline or Athenian reliance on citizen mass and naval reach, Thebes is searching for a third way, smaller, sharper, and more emotionally welded. Strange side fact: Thebes' legendary founder Cadmus was said to have sown dragon's teeth to raise armed men from the earth Spartoi, the sown. In a way, the city is about to do it again, not with myth, but with a human seedbed of crisis, pride, and the hard logic of survival. Out of that second sowing, Thebes does something Greece whispers about, but never formalizes so boldly. It builds an elite unit out of pairs. By the mid-370s BCE, most traditions link the reorganization to Gorgidas, with later polishing by Pelopidas. 300 hoplites are selected and bound into 150 couples. Ancient writers describe them as lovers and beloveds, not in a modern slogan way, but as a social fact Thebans think can be turned into tactical steel. This is the official institutional birth of the sacred band, and in Greek terms it's radical, not a temporary picked force, but a standing corps maintained by the city. How does that function in battle? Think of the hoplite phalanx as a human wall that only works if each brick refuses to crumble. The sacred band is placed where walls fail first, at the critical point, often in the front rank or along the strongest wing. To act as an anchor, each pair fights side by side, shield edges overlapping, spears thrusting in near unison. If panic ripples through the line, the band is supposed to absorb it. Shame before your beloved is a stronger break than fear of any commander's lash. This is the moral engine Thebes is gambling on. Their training is correspondingly intense. They drill not just to march in tune, but to read each other's weight shifts, to pass fatigue like a relay, to keep the shield-to-shield spacing exact when the ground turns uneven. A sacred band hoplite needs the standard skills: endurance under armor, spear work in tight quarters, the ability to shove in the othismos push, but also something extra: emotional control. Loving the man beside you can make you reckless. The unit demands you translate devotion into patience, not a solo charge. That tension is one of their weaknesses. Pairs can overextend to protect each other, and a unit built on intimacy can be psychologically shattered if the line breaks. There's academic debate here too. Some scholars argue the erotic bond is central, a deliberate morale technology. Others think later authors romanticized a more ordinary elite guard, either way. Compared to Spartans, whose cohesion comes from state upbringing, mess discipline, and fear of dishonor, the band's cohesion is chosen, personal, and therefore potentially fiercer. Compared to Athenian citizen levies, who rotate in and out with politics and seasons, the band is permanent, professionalized, and expensive, lesser known. Side fact, the sacred band trained at public expense and lived together, effectively a city-funded brotherhood, in a world where most hoplites went back to farms after campaign season. These men stayed soldiers every day, sharpening not just their spears, but the idea that to hearts in one formation might hit like a single hammer dot by 375 BCE, the Theban experiment needs proof, not philosophy. The chance arrives near the village of Thebes, a small place with a big echo. Pelopidas is leading a force north to strike at Orchomenus when word comes that a Spartan, more roughly a regiment, has marched into the area. Here's the officially recognized historical event, the Battle of Thebes, where the sacred band meets Spartan veterans in the open and wins. Ancient sources say the Thebans are outnumbered, and even if the exact figures are argued over in academic debate, what matters is the asymmetry of reputation. Spartans are supposed to be unbeatable on land. Thebes is where that myth first cracks. The terrain is narrow, road pinched between hills and marsh. Pelopidas doesn't retreat. He forms his men against the Spartan line, and the sacred band takes the spear point of the advance. Their function here is simple and brutal in logic. Hit first, keep the line from wavering, and force a decision before Spartan depth can envelop them. The band moves like a wedge inside the broader phalanx, concentrating weight where morale is on a knife edge. Tactically, Thebes relies on shock. The sacred band's front ranks target Spartan commanders and the right-hand files that traditionally carry the heaviest honor. They don't fight as scattered heroes. This is tight phalanx work, synchronized steps, spears thrust over shield rims, rapid replacement of fallen or exhausted front men. The skills needed are a level above ordinary hoplites, not just courage, but reflexive formation, keeping under pressure, and the trust to lean your shield into your partner's shoulder without looking. Strengths show immediately. A permanent elite unit trained together can keep cohesion at higher speed. Pairs reinforce each other's will, so the moment of collision doesn't dissolve into individual fear. But weaknesses show too. If the wedge stalls, the whole force is trapped in a choke point, and emotional bonding, while it stiffens resolve, can also tempt men to stay too long in the killing zone rather than rotate back. Strange side fact, Thebes is near a sanctuary of Apollo, and some later Greeks liked to frame the victory as divinely favored. Modern historians are skeptical, but the story itself mattered because soldiers fight on stories. Compared to similar elite corps, like Spartan Hippies, the Royal Guard, or Athenian Thebes, the sacred band now has something rarer than training. A legend earned against the hardest opponent in Greece. Thebes doesn't end the war, but it tells every Theban that their gamble works, and every Spartan that Thebes is no longer a city to be occupied without consequence. Thebes is the spark. Leuctra in 371 BCE is the firestorm that remakes Greece. The armies meet on a flat plain in Boeotia, and this officially recognized battle becomes a textbook moment in military history. Sparta arrives confident, deeper in numbers and reputation, their king Cleombrotus commanding. Thebes fields fewer hoplites, but under Epaminondas and Pelopidas the city brings a new geometry to old warfare. The sacred band is no longer just an elite add-on, it's the forged tip of a redesigned spear. Epaminondas stacks his left wing to extraordinary depth, 50 ranks by some accounts, while thinning the center and right. Instead of the usual equal line-to-line shove, he aims to smash the Spartan right with overwhelming mass, then let the rest of the enemy line unravel from shock. The sacred band sits in that left-wing hammer, close to Pelopidas, acting as the unit that can keep order inside the crowded depth and drive forward at the crucial tempo. In battle terms, they are both the pilot light and the stabilizer, first into the collision, last to yield ground. How do they function inside this Theban machine? They absorb the worst of the Spartan charge, then surge in coordinated bursts. using disciplined step hand thrust rather than a single reckless rush. Their skills are hyper-phalanx skills, holding a straight shield wall, while bodies compress from behind, keeping spear points aligned even when visibility vanishes in dust, and knowing when to switch from long spears to secondary swords without breaking the line. The paired structure matters here because men can communicate by pressure and movement, not words. In a crush where shouting is useless, strengths at Leuctra look almost unfair. Professional training plus personal bond yields a unit that doesn't leak fear. Their presence helps the left wing keep cohesion while advancing obliquely, a maneuver that would shred a citizen levy. Yet the weaknesses are visible in silhouette. The band's effectiveness depends on being used at the decisive point. Spread thin, they lose their moral shock value. And if the left wing fails, the whole asymmetrical plan collapses. There's academic debate over what mattered more, Epaminondas' tactical innovation or the sacred band's elite morale. Most scholars land on both, but the argument keeps going because Leuctra is where ideas and bodies meet. Compared with Sparta's traditional equal depth right wing push, Thebes fights like a modern boxer, loading power into one fist. Compared with other Greek armies that still treated elites as ornaments, Thebes makes them the engine. Strange side fact, after Leuctra, Sparta had so many dead Spartiates that their citizen class never fully recovered. An invisible strategic wound opened by a 300-man brotherhood fighting inside a deeper, stranger formation. Leuctra doesn't just win a battle, it hands Thebes a brief, blazing hegemony. And the sacred band now marches not as a daring experiment, but as the city's signature weapon. In the 360s BCE, they are everywhere the Theban state chooses to project power into the Peloponnese, across central Greece, and north toward Thessaly. One officially recognized turning point in this era is the liberation of Messenia in 369 BCE, where Epaminondas' army breaks Spartan control and founds Messene anew. The sacred band's role in such campaigns is less a single cinematic charge and more a constant, exhausting function. They are the dependable hardpoint around which allied contingents can align. The way they fight in these years shows how an elite unit sustains a wider coalition army. Thebes often campaigns with Arcadians, Argives, Thessalians, good fighters, but not drilled to one rhythm, so the sacred band is used to stiffen uncertain wings, escort commanders, or punch through local resistance when negotiations fail. Their phalanx work remains the core, tight front, relentless forward pressure, and the ability to execute Epaminondas' maneuvers, oblique advances, weighted wings, timed reserves without turning a march into a wobble. Skills needed now expand. Beyond shock courage, they must be logistics hardened, able to fight after days on the road, to keep formation discipline when camp morale sags, to understand mixed terrain tactics where hoplite lines meet hills, river crossings, and city approaches. Strengths remain clear, permanence, training, and the psychological voltage of pairing. Allies trust them, enemies fear where they appear in the line. But hegemony strains even the sharpest blade. The sacred band's weakness is the weakness of all elite corps. They are finite. Every campaign risks grinding irreplaceable veterans, and the political map is shifting. Athens rebuilds influence at sea. Persia plays sponsor to whoever checks Sparta. And in the north a new power is rising, Macedon bringing cavalry and longer pikes that challenge hoplite assumptions. Scholars debate whether Thebes overextended strategically or was simply unlucky with leaders' deaths. Either way, the band is fighting in a world that no longer stands still. Strange side fact from this period, Thebans sometimes carried trophies of captured Spartan shields in processions, a reversal so shocking to Greek eyes that comedians joked Sparta would now need to learn courage. From Boeotia, compared to earlier city militias, the sacred band now resembles something closer to a standing National Guard, magnificent, costly, and increasingly burdened by the size of the stage. It helped Thebes step onto. By 338 BCE, the stage has tilted. North, Philip II of Macedon has unified his kingdom, refined the Sarissa phalanx, and trained cavalry to strike like a closing door. Thebes and Athens, old rivals, forced into partnership march to stop him at Charonia. This officially recognized battle is the sacred band's end, and one of Greece's hinge moments. The allied Greek line forms across the plain, Thebans on the left, Athenians on the right. Opposite the Thebans stands Philip, opposite the Athenians, the young Alexander. Already trusted with the companion cavalry, the sacred band takes its familiar position in the Theban left, but the battlefield logic has changed. Macedon doesn't fight like Sparta. Philip fixes the Greek front with pike blocks, then manipulates the line with feigned retreats and cavalry timing. Ancient accounts say the Athenians surge forward, thinking they've broken Philip's center. The gap that opens between allies is the sort of seam hoplite warfare can't easily stitch mid-fight. The sacred band's function becomes tragically clear. Hold, even if holding means being isolated. Because if the left collapses, the whole coalition folds. What skills are demanded here? Everything they are good at: steadfast shield wall work, refusal to yield, compressed fighting under pressure. And yet the weaknesses of their system are exposed by a different kind of war. Against long pikes and cavalry shock, an elite hoplite unit can be bypassed, pinned, then struck in the flank. Their intimate pairing that once multiplied courage now multiplies grief. A unit unwilling to disengage to protect comrades becomes a unit that can be encircled. Scholars still argue whether their annihilation was a tactical inevitability against Macedonian combined arms, or a failure of allied coordination that placed them in an impossible spot. Strange side fact: after the battle, Philip is said to have wept when he saw their bodies laid in ranks, recognizing what kind of men he had broken. A mass grave with lion monument was later raised over them, and when it was excavated in modern times, skeletons were found arranged as if still in formation, one last echo of discipline. Compared to Sparta's last stands, which often sought honorable retreat, the sacred band dies where it stands. Compared to Macedon's flexible system, their greatness is also their limit. They are the perfect answer to hoplite war, meeting a new age that asked a harder, wider question. The story of the sacred band is not just a romantic footnote. It is a case study in how morale, training, and social structure can be engineered into battlefield power. Effectiveness first, as a tactical instrument inside hoplite warfare. They were extraordinary. Their permanent status meant higher drill standards than seasonal citizen levies. Their pairing system created a localized morale loop, each man both protector and witness to the other, which raised the cost of cowardice and the reward of steadiness. At Tegera and Leuctra, that translated into visible outcomes: disciplined advance under pressure, refusal to buckle at the collision point, and an ability to act as a predictable hardcore for commanders designing bolder maneuvers. But effectiveness has context. The band was not a magic trick independent of Theban strategy. They worked best when concentrated at a decisive point, supporting weighted wing tactics and leadership willing to risk asymmetry. Their strengths also carried built-in fragility. An elite corps is a limited resource. Attrition erodes it faster than a city can replace it, and a bond that locks men together can make maneuver harder when retreat or lateral movement is required. In short, they were optimized for the moral and physical physics of hoplite contests, shield walls meeting head-on, rather than for the combined arms future that Macedon perfected. Their legacy is therefore double. On one hand, they proved that unit cohesion could be built from chosen personal ties as effectively as Sparta built it from the state. On the other, the destruction at Charonia shows that even the best formation is vulnerable when the rules of war shift. The sacred band may not have survived the new era, but they helped end the old one. And their example still forces historians and anyone thinking about soldiers as humans to debate where courage truly comes from and how love can be turned into a weapon without losing its soul.